This is a tutorial that's going to cover making a simple tea bag in my using a polygon cube. I'll start out in my orthographic view where I can kind of get the proportions based on this model. You may want to use an image on a free image plane, it's your choice, but I'm going to use what I already have here for reference. Go to Create Polygon Primitives. I got it set for interactive, which means I can draw that rough shape by utilizing my perspective and my orthographic windows. So I'll start by dragging a simple cube. And now I'm going to use the edge loop tool to create a rough version of this. We're not going to refine it until the texture map is on. So I'm going to go ahead and get my edge loop tool, and I'll start by maybe clicking here, and I'm going to click on the edge so I can pull it in on the edge of the tea bag. If we were to take a look at the model again, you'll see that how it kind of tapers in where that bag kind of folds around the bottom and on the side. So that's what we're going to rough in. So once I've got my edge, I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose edges. And I'll just double click here. Now, I'm kind of anticipating the top where the corners are going to go in up here. So I'm going to move this edge first. I'll pull that up about there. And now I'll grab these three edges. Let's get rid of that ground plane for a moment. And I'll just scale in. And at the bottom one, perhaps I'll just move that up. So if I was going to my geometry now, you can see kind of what we've got here. Now I'm going to pull the corners in the orthographic view where the bag folds over. So I'll grab my vertices, get the top, and I'll get my scale tool and I'll pull that in like so. Now it tapers at the top where everything kind of flattens out. So I'll grab all the vertices here. Let's try that again. Now sometimes you'll see that perhaps your vertices are not aligned the way you want. So in this case I'm going to be scaling, so I'm going to double click on the scale tool and I'm going to click on reset and it'll straighten out those vertices. So now if I pinch it in, it does that somewhat symmetrically like so. And I'll save that. Now if we take a look at the model again, the finished product, you'll notice that around this side there are these little flaps that appear. So I want to kind of work that into this as well. So in order to do that, I have to pull these edges back out again, right up here in the corner. So it's a pretty simple process. I'll hit 4 on the keyboard to go to my wireframe, and I'll select vertex. I'm going to carefully select this vertex, and then shift select this one. I'm going to go to my orthographic view so I can be a little bit more accurate here. And I'll just scale that out, back out to the original width of the whole bag that we're making here. And I'll hit 5 on the keyboard, and you can kind of see where we're going with this. Now, it's much easier to generate a UV map for this tea bag right now before I refine this. But I think I'd like to go and put those flaps that we see here first before we actually generate the UV map. If I wanted to, I could tighten this up a little bit more so it's a little flatter. There we go. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my extrude tool. I'm going to put that up here on my shelf. Hold down Command Shift, Edit Mesh, and I'll click on Extrude. And I'm going to go make sure my extrude tool is set for the default. I had been generating a lot of divisions in the last project, so I'm going to go to Edit Reset, something you may have to check if you've been using that extrude tool. And now we're going to create those little flaps. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to choose Edge, and I'll start with this edge, and I'll go to this one, and I'll shift select that. And now I'm going to click on that extrude tool. And I'm going to click to center it. So you'll notice that when you put the extrude tool on, there's this little blue button appears outside the vertices. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that it centers the function that we're going to generate here between those two selected edges. So I'll simply pull that out like so a bit, and then I'm going to scale it in to get it started. All right, so you can see we're starting to get those edges. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go back to my object mode. Now we're going to take a look at another tool set that appears in Maya. And it's going to allow me to take these vertices and put them and snap them right there so that what we have are those little tabs that we see on our finished product here. So I'm going to zoom in where I want to do this. And then up in the right-hand corner, you'll see a series of icons, one of which at the very end we're accustomed to, and we go back and forth in the attributes to the channels box here. The very first one you see is a cube and then a little hammer. And when I click on that, it shows me a number of tools down on the right-hand side where the attributes are. My objective is to get this vertex and snap it to there. I'm going to select the geometry. I'll hit 5 so we can see this. And I'm going to put the ghost on with this icon with the two white boxes, so perhaps it might be easier to see when you review this tutorial. I'm going to go down to the toolbar, and you'll see that there's a tool called Target Weld. And if I click on that, you'll see it becomes, the geometry goes into the sub-edit mode. And what that allows me to do now is with my left mouse, I can click and hold it down, drag to the destination, and when I let go, it snaps it very nicely to that edge. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll click on the one that I'm going to move and drag to the destination and let go. I'll hit Command S to save and hit continue. So you can see how easy it was to kind of generate that content. Now I'm going to hit W on the keyboard. Make sure you get out of that tool. I'm going to right click and choose vertex, and maybe I'd like to refine where these will be a bit. I'm not going to work too much on it, but perhaps the height looks good. I think maybe I would like this to be a little bit closer to the actual geometry now, and I can do something like that. Now I could extrude these faces on the inside if I wanted to, and that's something you can do as well, but let's leave it like that for now. I think that'll serve our purposes. I'm going to hit Command S to save and then hit continue. Now let's go back to our full geometry. I'll take the ghost off, and now we're going to generate the UV map. I'll select my geometry, go back to my object mode if I'm not in it, right click on it and choose Assign New Material, and I'm going to go and click on Arnold, and I'll choose the standard surface, and now I'll go to that newly generated node. I'll name it Teabag. And I'm going to follow the color node out and use that checkerboard to get started. So I'll click on checker, and if I don't see the texture, I'll hit 6 on the keyboard. Now, this is going to be pretty generic when it hits the top here. So if we were to look at the finished product again, there's not a whole lot going on up in here. It's pretty consistent. It's down in here where the art is important. So that's where we're kind of concerned about generating our texture map. Now it's got a bit of a glare on the Teabag, doesn't have a glare. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my material attribute. And my material attribute, I'm going to back off the specular weight, and you'll see that it gets dull. Okay, and that's pretty much what we want for a Teabag. And I'm saving quite a bit as I do this. Now, I want to use automatic mapping from here down, because up here we can use planar mapping in the z-axis, that's the blue axis, just to get the top, and it'll generate the same texture on the back. So the important part is down here where the art is going to go. So go to my orthographic view where I'm looking directly at my geometry like so. I'm going to right click, I'm going to choose face. I'll select the faces from there down. And I'll go to my perspective view to kind of see this as it generates. I'm going to go to UVs and I'm going to choose automatic mapping. And now I'm going to click on my texture editor. I'll hit A on the keyboard. And I'm going to take the texture off because I know it's what I want. And I'll put the blue tab on so that I can see what I'm doing here. Now, I'm going to take the pieces I know that are going to be that automatic mapping. I'm going to pull them off to the side so that I can deal with the top edge here where we haven't generated a planar map yet. I'm going to right click in the texture editor, choose shell, and I'll drag this up like so. I'll grab these, and you can kind of see in this basic form how easy it is to decipher what we've generated. You can see that we've got the sides, there's our bottom, and I'm going to go in now and I'm going to generate what I need for the top edge. Once again, I'll go to face. I'll select those top faces and I'm going to go to UV and we'll go to planar mapping and I'm going to choose Z and I'll hit apply and you can see it generated that texture map. Now what I'd like to do though is I want those little checkerboard patterns to be square. So I'm going to go over to the channel window now. In the channel window you'll see projection width and height. I'm going to change both of those to the same number and it'll square that for me. So I'll make it 10 for now. And then I'll go to my editor. And in my editor, I'll simply scale that down to something a little bit more appropriate for what I'll need. I'll scale that a little bit more once I have everything generated, but that's a good start. Now, if you were ever in doubt about textures, you can always go in and if you're viewing your geometry, you can see that you can select faces and you'll see that the faces actually are highlighted in your geometry. So I know these two faces belong to either side of the Teabag. So once again, I'll grab those and I think I'll put them over here like so. And I'm going to sew these together now. Let's go ahead and start to sew this together. So I'm going to right click and choose edge and I'll select a random edge here. And I can see there's a corresponding edge. And if you recall, to sew that, I can either use the icon up here. It's a little box with two arrows, one going up and one going to the right. And if you don't see that, the menu may be closed with this vertical line and that rectangle. If you see a triangle against the line, that means there's a hidden menu. If you want to close it, you can click on the triangle reappears. So you may have to do that. Now the other alternative is simply to go to polygons, move and sew edges. And you can see it's kind of taken that and dragged it over there like so. Now I'm going to select the other edge. Now if I wanted to, I'm going to do this as well. Let me just back out of this a moment and undo this. There we go. I can always start by selecting a shell and putting it down closer to its respective position. And I can approach it that way. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on edge. And then I'll click on move and sew. All right. Let's try this. I'm going to select this one, hit G. All right, not a problem. I'll select this one. I'll hit G. Now I want to rotate this so it's vertical. I'm horizontal, a little bit nicer. So I'll select shell. Now that's all one piece. I'll get my rotation tool and I'll just give that a tweak. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to sew. Let's go back here to edge. We'll grab another edge and we'll go to move and sew. Now put the bottom, which is here. I'll click on that. I'll hit G. And now all I have to do is gather all this into the left-hand corner because this is pretty much self-contained. I'll go to shell and I'll drag that down. I think I'm going to put this here for now. And I'm going to scale this a little bit more proportionally with this. Okay, so I'll get my scale tool and I'll just pull that in like that. I'll select this one, I'll get my rotation tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the rotation axes a little larger, because the larger that circle, the more precise you can be in lining this up the way you want. I'm going to get both of these shells now. So once again, I'll right click and choose shell, I'll grab them, get my move tool, I'll put them up in the corner, I'm going to scale them a little bit. And then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to line these up a little bit better and scale it a little better as well. So I'll do this. And I'll take that and tuck that like so. And I'll get my scale tool. That's going to work pretty well. All right, I don't really have to sew that up. That's going to be fine just like that. I'm going to return to my object mode with my geometry. And now that it's selected, I can generate that UV map. We'll go to polygons, UV snapshot, and I'll direct it to my project folder and save. Click OK. Now we'll go into Photoshop and we'll generate our texture map. All right, I'm in Photoshop and I've opened up that PNG that I generated, and I made it red just for my own references. I'm starting to build the layers to kind of isolate the content so I can work on this a little bit more fluidly. Now, I've already got one that I created, and you can see that it's consisted of a yellow layer that I've put some noise on. And then I went out to Google and I grabbed a picture of some loose tea, and this is what I came up with. All right, so you can see that after putting the work into it, you can see in relationship to where it falls in the context of the UV map. So let's assume that you've done all this work, you know how to do that. We'll go ahead and we'll use this texture and we'll apply it in Maya. All right, so here we are back in Maya. I'm going to select the Teabag. I'm going to right click and choose Material Attributes. And we're just going to break the connection of the checkerboard pattern and introduce our own texture. So just as before, I would right click on the word color under base and choose break connection. I'll follow the checkerboard pattern out, click on File, Image Name. I'll click on the folder, and I'll go to Desktop, and I'll find my texture, and click on Open, and there we have it. Now we can go ahead and refine this so it looks a little bit more like a tea bag, you know, to be a little bit more relaxed, have a little bit more geometry, a little bit more shape to it. All right, so I'm going to select my geometry, and I've gone in and I've put the edge loop tool on. Now the edge loop tool is this grid with an orange vertical dash line through it, and I got that by holding down Command Shift and going to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. So I'll grab the Insert Edge Loop, and I know that if I wanted to soften this a little bit and smooth it, I'm going to hit 3 on the keyboard. You can see we're not anywhere near what we want here. So I'll hit 1 on the keyboard to return to that. I'll grab the Edge Loop tool, and I'll just start to shore this up a little bit on the sides and the bottom. And now if I were to hit 3 on the keyboard, you can see it holds together pretty nicely as a tea bag. Now, to get a little bit more realistic about this, perhaps I would just throw a couple more edges in here. Maybe I would click here, get my scale tool and pull it out. You know, as the tea kind of settles in the bag itself, it kind of puffs the bottom of the bag out. If I wanted to, I could continue adding a little bit more geometry as I went, perhaps like that. Maybe I'll go up and put one here. You can see it's starting to hold together pretty well. All right. Now, the string on the tea bag was made using a path and the CV, the NURB circle. And we've done that. We did that in CGPH 20 when we made a straw. Now I'm going to create that little tab at the end of the tea bag string. I'm going to use a different tool to do that. So I'll hold down Command Shift. And I'm going to go to Mesh Tools. I'm going to go to Create Polygon. And I'm going to go to my top view now. And when I use this Create Polygon, I can go in and drop points, as many as I'd like. In this case, I'm making kind of an 8-sided figure. I'm using the grid roughly to rough this out. And I'll click, and before I go back, I would not go back to where I started. I would stop just short of that, and when I hit return, it fills that in for me. All I need to do now is use my extrude tool to give this some thickness. So I'm going to center my pivot. Let's go to our perspective view. And I'm going to right click and choose face, select the face, click on the polygon extrude tool, and I'll just pull that up a bit. You can see now I've got that piece of geometry. All right, so that was under Mesh Tools and Create Polygon. Now I think pretty much the rest of this you can probably do yourself based on what you already know, but you can see we've pretty quickly put together that Teabag that we want.